I had no idea that Dr. Ryan was so resistant to change in the last project in which he was involved. While I think his talents and experience would make him a valuable asset to our team, I never would have put him in a position of high power and interest. Understanding your stakeholders is essential for team cohesiveness and workflow. To help you with this, let's talk about the value of doing an analysis of your major stakeholders. The project stakeholder analysis is an essential process performed continually throughout the project lifecycle, used to learn what makes your stakeholders tick and how to best engage each stakeholder to ensure the most positive results. In this capacity, the analysis is also used to anticipate the problems, conflicts, and objections that so often arise during the course of a project. The first thing we should do is define just what is a stakeholder. It is so important to know the major players that are affected by the project, especially those that you will be communicating and working with. Internal stakeholders would be the members of the project team, the project sponsor, support staff, as well as top management and other functional managers. You can see this could be a vertical slice of the organization. Each of these people will exert some type of influence on the project, and you need to understand how to work with them. These would be personnel that are a part of the organization. External stakeholders include the project customers if they are not internal to your organization. They could also be suppliers, vendors, or even government and civil groups. Any entity that the project serves or can be affected externally are potential external stakeholders. After having identified these key internal and external stakeholders, you now need to come up with a plan to find out more about them. It is critical that a project manager take the time to adequately identify, understand, and manage the relationships with these stakeholders. There are 3 project elements we will use to document this information: a stakeholder register, a stakeholder management strategy, and an analysis power grid. While you use these in concert with each other, let's take a look at them individually. A stakeholder register is a document that includes details related to the identified project stakeholders, usually available to many people, so it should not include sensitive information. The position could be any of the stakeholders mentioned so far. In this case, you state their position with the organization. In other words, org chart type of title. You then identify whether they are internal or external to the organization. Next, you identify their project role, which might be different from their organizational role. In other words, a position in the organization might be Vice President of Human Resources. However, their project role might be sponsor or champion. And obviously, you would state their contact information, such as email, phone, and such. Let's look at one that is filled out. As you can see, we have the project names, their positions, whether they're internal or external, their project role, and contact information. So now that we've identified these major stakeholders, let's take a look at their level of interest and influence so we can determine a management strategy. A stakeholder management strategy is an approach to help increase the support of stakeholders throughout the project and includes sensitive information, so it should not be readily available, probably just to the project manager. Your stakeholders' level of interest could be high or low, depending upon how the project impacts them or how they impact the project. Every project has consequences to be realized in a variety of ways and degrees. Projects can change the way work is performed, lessen responsibility, add responsibility, and the like. Impact can be felt in numerous ways, both obvious and subtle. The more serious and significant the impact, the more interest in the project. The level of influence has everything to do with the power to affect the project. It takes a lot of effort to make a successful project, but it only takes a small act to undo that effort and take it all off course. People, as well as groups, have the power to steer projects to success or divert their outcome in unwanted ways. This is the two-sided coin known as stakeholder influence. Understanding the levels of influence and interest help in understanding the management strategies for each primary stakeholder. Let's look at an example of how it works. Here again, the names of the major stakeholders are listed with their level of interest and level of influence. As you can see, each stakeholder has various levels of interest and influence that dictates the management strategies. Take, for example, Mike Sunby. His level of interest is high and his level of influence is also high. So the strategies helping to interact with Mike is that you understand that he is very outgoing and visionary. He has great traits for a project champion. He is concerned about financials and has an MBA. So you need to keep him informed and ask for his advice as needed. So as you look at the levels of interest and influence on each one of the major stakeholders, you'll develop a management strategy for each one of them. Something you might want to know is in Dr. Ronald Ryan. His level of interest is high, but his level of influence is low. So something about Dr. Ryan that you probably should know is that he led the Phase 1 project and is upset that he was not asked to lead the Phase 2 project. However, he's been with the hospital for over 20 years and can be a good resource, but he could also sabotage the project, maybe unknowingly. So you need to ask Lucy to talk to him to avoid problems. Perhaps give him a small consulting role on the project. So understanding these stakeholder management strategies will aid you in creating a analysis power grid. This is a priority chart that places a value of interest and influence as high or low for each of your stakeholders. If the level of interest and influence are both low, you simply need to monitor them with a minimum effort. If the influence is low and the interest is high, you need to keep them informed. If the influence is high but the interest is low, just keep them satisfied. However, if the influence and interest are both high, you need to manage the relationship closely. In thinking back to our stakeholders, Dr. Ronald Ryan had a low influence but high interest, so you could keep him informed. Vincent Smith, our vendor, had a high influence but a low interest, so you would keep him satisfied. But Mike Sunby and Lucy Camarena had both a high interest and influence, so you would manage them more closely. So when you put together your project team and stakeholders, and especially how to manage the Dr. Ryans of the world, you should put together a strong stakeholder analysis.